you are at Professional Advice to Headwinds, Tailwinds and Navigating Change, FAP or FAP Leaders Forum. So if you want to go, this is the wrong one, you were meant to be next door. Otherwise, please stay. We're lovely to have you here this afternoon for the last breakout session. I will now hand you over to your facilitator. This is Daniel Ralph from Strategi, the CEO of Strategi, and he will be leading our lovely panel and will also introduce you to them. So thank you and enjoy the session. If you have any questions, please use the app, or I have a microphone and I'm happy to run around and take questions that way, however you feel more comfortable.
Thank you, Carissa. Yes, my name is Daniel Ralph from Strategi, or Strategy. Tomato. It's all the same at the end of the day. So thank you for joining us here at this Advice Session 2, Headwinds, Tailwinds and Navigating Change and Looking for Opportunities for Growth. So joining me today, we've got a panel of experts from my left, moving in this direction here. We've got Tim Fairbrother, owner of Rival Wealth. He's the owner of Rival Wealth and is a KiwiSaver insurance provider and investment provider. He's an award-winning financial advisor and has recently won the Outstanding Advisor Award in Financial Planning from FANS in 2019. He has a DIMS license, which has been there since 2015, and has recently obtained his FAP license in December of last year. So Tim will bring the perspective of a FAP owner to this conversation, and also a financial advisor. Just next to him, we've got Tony Dench there, from CEO of New Park and Share, over 30 years experience in the financial services sector and professional services as well. He's been CEO of Share and New Park for nearly 5 years and has navigated the changes and the issues that have faced the sector for that period of time and through obviously some significant change. So Tony will bring insight into managing the headwinds from a practical and giving us practical solutions from a FAP provider. We have Jess joining us, Jess Smee, financial advisor and operations manager there at Solutions Financial Services, who specialise in insurance, and KiwiSaver. She's also the founder of Ducks in a Row, which is a financial education platform helping Kiwis get up to speed with all things money. And Jess will bring the perspective of a young financial advisor and an entrepreneur in the industry. And finally, we have Tricia. So Tricia Brown is Head of Solutions and Services at Fidelity Life, with experience in management, professional development and solutions for growth and performance of advisor businesses. So Tricia will bring the perspective of product providers and advisors. So we brainstormed a few things before this session in terms of the headwinds that have challenged financial advisors over the last years, but also that will continue to challenge advisors in the years to come. And some of these things include the economic impacts. So we all heard the economists today talking about the dire warnings, I suppose, of the economy. There's staffing issues as well. There's shortages, and that's in financial advisors, as well as just general admin staff. We've got the Great Resignation. We've got the trend of FAPs merging or acquiring, financial advisors leaving the industry, and there's the whole licensing regime. There's importance of governance, cybersecurity. These are some of the things we're going to talk about, but I want to also welcome the floor out for questions as well. And as Carissa mentioned, please send through your questions. So I'm going to open up to the panel now and start off with maybe Tony and the economic impacts that are affecting New Zealand. So the cost of living has gone up, cost of actually providing business has gone up, mortgage rates are increasing, there's an increasing issue with household spending, so spending is down by 3.2% recently. When it comes to other economic indicators, the indicators are going down. So from an advisor perspective and a FAP perspective, Tony, what are some of the things that initiatives that you've put in place to navigate Share and New Park through those challenges there?
Yeah, thanks, Daniel, and good afternoon, everybody. It's lovely to be here. Can you hear me at the back? That's a yes. Good. Excellent. Well, look, from the point of view of an advisor, I guess the advisor is thinking, and we're all encouraged to think about this from a client-centric point of view, and we know that household budgets are necessarily getting squeezed, but I want to talk about this from the perspective of the advisor. And the thing that worries me a little bit about the advisor as they're looking into this particular economic headwind, if you saw the economic presentation earlier on in the presentation, it was putting a little dent in Grant Robertson's optimism, I fear, but there we go, we do our best. But I worry about, from an advisor's point of view, the challenges of this economic situation starting to impact on business from an investment point of view, investment volumes potentially down, less new business. From an insurance point of view, with premiums up, potentially less new business. And also from a mortgage point of view, if the housing market starts to move around, potentially less new business. And I think about that an advisor will not necessarily have seen these type of economic conditions, really no matter how long they've been in business. In recent memory, we probably haven't seen this sort of scenario. The clawback situation going straight to cash flow, how many advisors could walk through a $15,000, $20,000 clawback position, or a couple of those starting to run through? So I worry about this from the point of view of the advisors managing their cash flow and continuing in business, because if they're not in business, their clients don't have an advisor. How do we deal with that? It's encouraging advisors to think about putting a cash flow together to govern their business as if it was a business, and to put a cash flow together and to start to think about setting some money aside in case these economic conditions start to generate cash flow drains that they're not necessarily expecting.
Tim.
Isn't it great to see everyone without masks on? I came up on the plane this morning and the hostesses were smiling, so that was obviously a good start. And we're passing the microphone round up the front and not wiping it with anything before we pass it through, so it's obviously good too. I'm pleased that Tony doesn't have COVID. For us, we've sort of, I definitely reiterate everything that Tony said. I think that's a really good start, and we've focused on that as a business and things too. I think as individual advisors and as a business, we've also focused a lot on cash management. So we've right back probably at the end of last year, and probably over COVID as well, because we always knew that these difficult times were coming, and people were at home, and isn't it awful in this current society? And it's not just in New Zealand, is it, where people are having to decide whether they spend money on medication or on rent or on food, and that haves and have-nots are getting so much worse all the time. So for us, this focusing in on that cash management and trying to give people the tools to be able to do their own work, I suppose, is really where we're coming from, and reach out to us if they need help, but try to be able to be a lot more self-serving in terms of what it is that they're doing and how they're doing it.
Jess, do you want to have a talk about some things that you're doing in terms of contacting your clients?
Yeah, so we've sort of taken a more proactive approach to touching base with our clients, and we've basically said, look, we know things are getting really expensive here, and we completely understand, and we're also experiencing the same thing in our lives as well. So we're just creating a more relatable experience for our clients, and just trying to take it a little bit more holistically as well. So, like, for example, we'll send out newsletters that have sorted tools about, how to actually create a budget that's going to work in with your life, retirement planning tools. There's so much stuff and resources out there, and so we're just trying to add value through sort of non-conventional ways as well, just being a bit more proactive, with our communication strategy. And we've actually noticed a lot more opportunity out of that as well. So people might say, it is getting expensive, what can we do here? So we will, come up with a new strategy to help them manage things, but we also add value in other areas. And then we might find, they don't have medical insurance and they actually want to add that as well. So just creating more touch points with your clients, being more proactive, you will find a lot of new opportunity out of that.
Thanks, Jess. And also around customer communication strategies within your businesses, and really understanding the touch points that you have with your customers, because if you can preempt that something is happening, then obviously you have the ability to help manage it before it actually gets too bad. One of the things that we've done recently is around providing a market library of documents and newsletter articles that advisors can actually use to communicate with their customers. So some of the other things from a product provider point of view is around the flood relief package that we've put out, also for most businesses around the COVID response as well. So, whatever is going on in people's life, hopefully we've been able to have some sort of solution and get the advice that they need through communication with those customers.
Any comments on vulnerable clients and identifying them?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting one in terms of identifying, definition of vulnerable. And obviously, you don't know until you're talking with the customer around vulnerability. And I suppose a matter of making sure that you treat everybody kind of that way until you understand that they're okay with that. Everybody in their licensing requirements obviously will have a vulnerable customer policy, and will have trained staff around how to actually manage that and what to do and what signs to look for. So I think we've come a long way over the last few years in terms of really understanding customers, and customers' expectations are changing, and customers' lives have changed so much over this period of time. I think it's important to especially have training within our organisations at all levels to understand exactly what that means and how to deal with that.
Excellent. I want to move on to staffing. The Great Resignation, the fact that people are now heading overseas after being in lockdown for a period of time, so the OEs are happening. There's a labour shortage out there, there's low unemployment. It is difficult to find new advisors. There's a barrier to get into the industry now. Obviously, you've got to have the qualification. Even with, I suppose, the transition that's happening at the moment with a lot of advisors saying they're going to give up on the industry, they're going to leave the industry due to all the regulation and the barriers in the way. I think it was also came out in the FSC, well, it did come out in the FSC report recently. It said that staffing issues are one of the main issues that they're facing at the moment. It's a good little read of stats there. So what are some of the solutions that you've been implementing?
So I think firstly is to acknowledge the importance that New Zealanders have access to financial advice, and we as a community, I think, have to contribute to making sure that New Zealanders have that. Interesting around the FSC data, and it talks about customers are better off if they've had advice. Also in one of those reports it talked about the demographics of advisors, and in the over 50 market talked about 73% of advisors are actually over 50 years of age. The male-female balance was 82% male to female and 86% European. So in terms of, I suppose, diversity and the next generation of financial advisors, these have been some of the things that has driven us to actually Career Connect, which some of you may have heard of. And we've started this initiative to try and find people from outside of our industry to come in and really understand how beneficial and how rewarding it is to be a financial advisor.
I think in terms of in terms of keeping advisors and where we're at the moment in terms of what it is that we're doing is for us it's about flexibility and making sure that people. Advisors are people too. You can't just treat them like pieces of dirt all the time, people. I think the big thing is that, they have pets that pass away, and they have problems with their children falling over at school, and they have athletic sports they want to go to and see their kid come 72nd and all that sort of stuff. And so I think that, for us that became really clear when we got our first employee. I still can remember the day she came and asked if she could go and watch her kids' athletic sports back in 2009. And I remember saying yes, but I remember when she left I was absolutely horrified about the fact that someone would leave work to go and see their child go and run in something, and because I obviously didn't have any kids at that point in stage. And then I remember her face when she came back, and I think her son had actually won. He didn't come 72nd and he won, and how proud she was that she was able to be there to see that. And at her last job where she worked at a lawyer, they wouldn't let her do anything along those sorts of lines. And so I think from our perspective it's about that flexibility and making sure that we're working in with them too. And probably just the other thing too, I think, is that whole piece around letting them know that they don't need to be giving themselves 100% all the time, particularly when people are getting behind target, or they're getting behind in their workload, or there's too much in terms of being able to share the workload around. I think that's a really important thing too, that whole piece around, give your best when you have to. You don't have to be at 100% the whole time. And last week, I think I did 29 meetings in the week last week, and Monday morning I was feeling pretty grumpy about what my week looked like, and then at the end of the week I was so relieved that it was finished. But at the same time, I don't expect all my team to do that, but at the same time, it sets the bar to them to be able to show them that I'm happy to get out there and see as many people as I need to get the job done too, rather than them all complaining about how much work that they've got on their desks as well. So I think, so hopefully a few lessons there just around the flexibility and trying to lead from the front at times as well.
Thanks, Tim. So I guess from the perspective of a kind of reasonably large group, Sharon Newport collectively, between 400 and 500 advisors, and that's across insurance, investments, and mortgages. So we do see advisors leaving. There's no question about that. There are advisors leaving, and a number of those advisors are leaving primarily because they've run the race. They've spent their time in the career and they've come to a stage where, well, this is a catalyst for them, but actually they've come to the end of their career. And a group can find, any of the groups can find a succession plan, and that's important. The bit I want to talk about, though, is that seems to be primarily around the insurance space. And there seems to be a lot of discussion about the insurance advisors are perhaps more prevalent in this at the moment. The investment advisors, regulated a decade or more ago, perhaps not feeling that quite the same. The insurance advisors are feeling the weight of that regulation a little bit more now. And then you get to the mortgage advisors. And the mortgage advisors are where I start to smile a little bit, because the mortgage advisors are typically coming out of some of the corporates, typically a younger demographic, absolutely more diverse in all kinds of ways, Tricia. And they're coming through our doors full of enthusiasm, entirely coachable, and they don't see regulatory change. They just see, well, these are the new regulations, so this is what I need to do, and off we go. They are full of enthusiasm and ambitious and ready to grow. Then they look across the fence and they see the insurance world and they think, oh, well, if I'm doing a mortgage for a 25 or a 35-year-old or whatever, I'd like to be able to talk to him about the KiwiSaver. I'd like to be able to talk to him about protection, and I'd like to build a relationship with him over the next 20 or 30 years that might see into investment stuff and move through there. That new crew that are coming through is not being well talked about in our sector. And I think we should celebrate those new people coming in. Tricia, absolutely endorse what you're doing in your business to bring that through, perhaps more in the insurance space. But these new mortgage advisors coming through, and it is typically in the mortgage space, hugely enthusiastic. Last 3 months, we've brought on 70 new advisors. 70 new advisors into the sector, and that's just in our group. The other groups are doing similar sorts of things. So I think it's tremendous. There are green shoots of hope. To use Minister Robertson's words, there's reason for optimism.
Excellent. So that's good on the new advisors coming in. How about the existing staff, the advisors, but not just the advisors? I'm talking about the administration staff and others within your organisation. They're also leaving. Like, how do you keep these people on board and keep them motivated? Because I've experienced it. You have your administration person leave, and it does impact your business. Even if you have a marketing person leave, it impacts your business. What are the key things that you're looking at there? What are the strategies you put in place to retain your staff?
Well, we actually share our advisor support, so that's actually been a big help because it shares the risk as well. We've got multiple advisor support people that we can lean on when we need. But I also think what I've really realised this year is not becoming 100% reliant on other people to run your business. You need to know how to do everything as well. And if you can't do certain things like the marketing side or whatever it may be, outsource it to someone that can. Focus on what you're good at, but make sure that you're not passing on 100% of the control, because if someone leaves, you don't want that to stop your business in its tracks. You need to keep going. That's what I would say to that one.
Also add to that, in advisory businesses, what is your strategy and what are the priorities, and bring everybody on the journey with you with that, because then people understand what you want to achieve at the end of the year or 2 years or 5 years, whatever you're looking at there. And I suppose empower people to make decisions and to come up with ideas, because sometimes I find myself at times I'll be so busy thinking about so many things that I actually just need some space to think. And this is where the people in your business have great ideas. And somebody once said, bring in, somebody straight out of uni just to give you some some energy in terms of new ideas, and I think that's really good to bring into organisations to know what your strategy is, prioritise it, and bring some new ideas and people in around that. So.
Excellent. I want to move on to managing the workload again. With not only people leaving, but also just the increased pressure of the industry with licensing, education. There's a number of different things that are happening that is causing, I suppose, increased workload not only on advisors but also staff within your organisations. What are some of the things that you've done to expedite some of these challenges, or overcome these challenges, but expedite the process of, say, licensing? I think, Jess, you had some good comments to make.
What have we done? Quite a few things, but so basically, I'll just give you a bit of background. So we are 3 advisors, 1 support person. We've got about 900 clients. My brother thought it was appropriate to go off to Europe for 6 weeks. So that put a lot of pressure on the rest of us trying to manage the workload. But some of the key things that we always do is we don't work outside work hours. We keep it, even though we are self-employed, we still need to make sure that we're having a healthy work-life balance, because if we get burnt out, that's not good for anyone. It's not good for our clients, it's not good for us, it's not good for our families. So yeah, we make sure that we're sticking to our proper work hours and respecting our own personal lives as well. We have outsourced quite a bit of the work that we don't want to do ourselves. So for example, the licensing process, we actually brought people in to help us with that because we were just finding that was very overwhelming. There was noise coming from all different avenues. And we just thought, no, we're just going to spend the money, get the help that we need so that we can actually move on and keep our business ticking along. So I think, yeah, sometimes you just have to spend money to get people to help you so that you can actually keep growing and make sure that you are not burning out as an advisor, because it is a super hard industry to work in. Being client facing is very difficult at times. I mean, dealing with people that have claims or someone passing away, that is huge emotional toll on people as well. So yeah, you just need to make sure you're respecting yourself and looking after yourself as well.
And probably just adding on to that too, from a investment advisor's perspective this year, so yeah, managing claims and things like that can be very daunting. So can also, if you've got someone that's got $2 million on their life savings and the markets go down 15 or 20%, and therefore you've now lost 300,000 of their hard-earned savings, or maybe worse still, if someone's got 200,000 and that's their life savings and it goes down 15%, and so the person that loses 200,000 probably doesn't care so much because they've still got a large amount there, but the person that loses 30 is very worried. And I've had the odd person cry in my meeting room over the last 6 months in terms of, and that's not necessarily just been ladies as well. I've had the odd man that's got pretty stressed out about what they're going to do next and where they get to, and so to Jess's point, that really does weigh on it, the advisors as well. And having that steely positivity every day that it's all good because markets are going to come back up again is always great, and have other people tell you that it's always great, but at the same time, you still do wonder when things do keep on going down all the time, when that turning point's going to be. So I'm looking forward to someone telling me if anyone has any ideas when that's going to turn around next. And I can tell my clients, thanks.
I'm going to need to book an appointment with Jess to figure out how I work just at normal hours. I think my team will, yeah, that's right. Just one thing I was thinking about in terms of workload is thinking about what technology can do to help take away those things that you do, like typing up dear such and such every day. There's ways and there's plugins, there's all sorts of technology that can actually help an advisor business run a whole lot smoother and optimise that real performance of the individuals within there. So never dismiss it. There's always something that's going to actually help a business run smoother.
So there's always too much to do, right? And that's just the reality. So I think actually that's one of the first things to think about. Get really comfortable with not getting it all done. There's heaps of stuff that I don't get done on a daily basis. Fortunately, most of those things don't really matter. So when you're reaching that point of kind of being overwhelmed, and we are seeing advisors overwhelmed at the minute, there's a heap of stuff. And when you're reaching that point of kind of being overwhelmed, there's only 2 things to focus on. The first thing is the thing that matters the most, and the second thing is the thing you can do something about. The rest of it, outsource it. And by outsourcing it, here comes the bad news, that means you're going to have to pay somebody else to do it. So advisors are also going to have to get reasonably comfortable with putting their hand in their pocket and actually paying for some of the things that they're just not going to get done if they try and keep it all to themselves. Because if they try to keep it all to themselves, they'll get overwhelmed, they'll not get there in time, and that's a challenge. So do what matters, do what you can control, and the rest, pay for somebody else to do it, or get comfortable with just letting it drop. Often it doesn't matter. Sometimes it does.
Excellent. Tim, you talked about some of the technology that you were using to book appointments, I think it was. An electronic diary or something? Or it might have been used, all right.
All English. There's a few different things that people can do to speed things up. So there's like Calendly, which people can just go and book appointments for themselves in your diary, which is really cool. Also getting another company to do your client newsletters and things like that. So just thinking a little bit outside the box, how can you free up your time? How can you connect more with your clients and communicate more with them, creating more touch points? Using a really good CRM system that automates a lot of the things that you need to do. And also just talk to other people in the industry and see what other advisors are doing, because everyone's got their own little secrets, and I think a lot of advisors don't really want to gatekeep a lot of things. They're happy to share. So if you are on your own or a small team of advisors, definitely try and find some like-minded people in the industry and just have a chat and see what they're doing to see if you can get some cool ideas off them.
So how do you know your staff are motivated? How do you keep them motivated? How do you know they're engaged? And how do you keep them motivated?
Well, I guess mine's a bit different because we're a family business. So we're all extremely motivated because my parents have built up this business for 30 years. So I don't want to come in and, sit on my laurels and not do anything. I want to make sure that we're growing our business and our family name and, doing my parents proud as well. But yeah, just with our other staff that we have, just getting them involved and bringing them into our family culture has been quite big for us. We're a family. We treat our team like family. We treat our clients like family, and that's our whole unique selling proposition. And that's why I think people like working with us. We like working with them, and that's why we kind of keep our staff around as well.
I think for us, definitely I think that's all great. We definitely buy into all those values and stuff too, which I think is really, really important. And it's also something that Jess talked about a little bit before, is that I was doing lots of stuff when I had when I was an advisor, or there was 3 advisors, or there was 4 advisors. So you'd try and do the marketing, and you'd try and do your systems and your processes, and then you'd start to try and do some of your legal work, and then suddenly you were the accountant as well, and there was so much that was happening, and so then you start outsourcing. And so now for me, I generally tend to focus mainly on the advice, and we have great people in our business that are doing the management of other people. And I can think of lots of clients where they're really great plumbers, but they're not necessarily great business people. And so I think from my perspective, it's that I've sort of stuck to my hobby, which is the financial advice and the piece that I love, and then leaving the management of the business up to those great people that are. And I think that particularly for us, because we have a lot of working mums, so I think in our office we have 5 chaps and 20 ladies, and so for us there's no point having a man who's 55 trying to manage 30-year-old ladies. It's just not, it just wouldn't work very well, because there's a lot of and I don't mean that disrespectfully, it's more the fact that there's lots of synergies between, they seem to tell each other a whole lot more, and they talk about a whole lot more stuff, and there's a whole lot more things happening across the office, which I think that it becomes so much, there's so much more relevance to the conversations that happen, and there's so much more that family awareness and the stuff that's happening that's there. So I think for us it's really just keeping the conversations going, and it doesn't necessarily need to be in meetings and things like that. It's in coffee breaks, and it's in the kitchens, and it's all that stuff where things are necessarily less formal.
I've actually got my team in the room here, so I'll answer this in terms of saying how to keep them happy is by being creative and allowing them space to actually come up with great ideas that make a difference. And I think at the end of the day, when you feel like you're achieving and making a difference and have a purpose in what you're doing and why you're there, that's a really important thing.
Excellent. I want to move on to, I suppose, the issue or the challenge of FAPs merging, and I suppose it's just a market condition at the moment. With over 1,700 FAPs that got their transitional licence, we're now got roughly 850, I think Anita Fraser said, that have now been fully licensed. Another 100 plus or so that are still in transition and getting that full licence. But that still leaves about 700 or so that haven't got their licence. Now, there are a whole lot of reasons behind not all of them getting there. My number is on about 1,400, so let's just say there's 400 that are not going to get their licence. But there is a whole lot of talk about they're moving from full licence to authorised bodies, a range of other different options, selling, merging. So I want to talk about that. Tony, as a leader of a major FAP, you've gone through some of these things before. What are the things that you consider when it comes to acquiring or merging a FAP into the business?
Well, look, I think there's certainly a degree of consolidation that's going on in the sector at the moment, particularly so in the insurance space. There is consolidation that's coming together, and I think that's advisors thinking perhaps, well, I want to look after clients, and I actually want the support of someone else to do some of those other bits and pieces. So there's a degree of that outsourcing going on, and that's happening in a number of the groups in the sector. So there is a little bit of a flight to larger organisations. But I heard the Minister speak right at the start of the regulations, however many years ago now, and he was really clear and said that every shape and size of financial advice business can exist amongst this regulation, and I think that's absolutely the case. But where an advisor is going to go down the route of consolidating with someone else, it's really important to have a good fit. The previous 5 minutes conversation has all been about culture, and it's really important to have a good fit as they go forward. That is the single most important thing of any kind of acquisition. No point a FAP buying a book or buying a business where it's just not a good fit with them, and vice versa.
Yeah, I think there will be a few clients without advisors come the 15th of March. Let's hope it's fairly small. But when it comes to, I suppose, acquiring databases from a product provider perspective, we'd be looking to say, can the purchaser, have they got the resources to service that customer? And we know that in the licensing guidelines, it talks about if you're acquiring a client base, the expectation of contacting and talking with that customer within the 12 months of acquiring them. So we're obviously keen to understand that if one advisor's got 2,000 customers, I'd assume they've got lots of technology to support them to get through that and talk to those customers. And I suppose the market and motivation for buying and selling, if we're nearing March and you're just thinking about starting your level 5, and maybe hopefully you've applied for your licence, but the market motivation for buying a book because you have to get out of the industry is going to be quite interesting. And also, I suppose, from a product provider, thinking about agencies when you are buying or selling books, will the actual product provider accept you with an agreement and a distribution agreement at that stage? So, there's lots in this. You could spend sort of all day talking about acquiring or disposing of client bases, especially in this market that we've got at the moment around redress, complaints, contracts. But yeah, all good stuff. So.
We've taken over and merged into our business probably about 17 now, I think, over the last sort of 15 years, and we've done a couple of large ones in the last couple of years that we've merged into our business. And for us, it's really been about organisational fit and making sure that the people that we're taking over from, they had those same sort of values that we did. They liked their clients, they treated them well with respect, and they had those similar views and values to what we did when we were taking them over. So I think that's really important. And probably something else that's been really prevalent, hasn't it? Not just been in the advisor space that we've talked about in recent times in terms of that advisor mergers and acquisitions. It's also been with the companies too. It's been the Cigna's been sold and the Partners Life changing hands, and Invest Now this week. Macquarie moving to Mercer today. I saw the news as well there as well, and Aon moving to Fisher Funds. So it's been in the corporate space too that there's been a huge amount of movement, not just in the advisor space too. So we are in a real flux of change at the moment across the board.
So, backwards planning everything, I think for some people they will actually submit their full licence on the 15th of March or the 14th of March of next year. So, and the reason I say that is because we saw it happening at our end as well at Strategy with people with going through the transitional period. They actually came to us to help them get their transitional licence on the 16th, 17th, 18th of March, and flowing on from there. So human behaviour dictates that is going to happen. But from your experience doing all the DD of culture, or the financials, and so on and so forth, maybe I can get some opinions on like how long it takes. What would you expect if someone is thinking of becoming an authorised body? When do they engage with that FAP?
Well, in terms of time frame, it really does depend to a large degree on the size of the business. So the due diligence, just getting the base information from the suppliers, can take 6 weeks, 2 months all on its own. Then understanding the advice process that the advisor's running in that particular business, their CRM system or not, depending on whether there is a CRM system, and what your level of comfort is on taking all of that on, and then into the the documentation of the sale and purchase itself and the agreements that run on from that. So that depends on how much they want to involve their particular legal team and everything that goes with that. As with Tim, we've done a number of acquisitions, maybe 70, 75 during Cher's lifetime. And those documents are really well settled, but that doesn't always mean that there aren't a degree of questions that come whenever they get into the legal stages. So all of that runs through. Typically from go to woe, it'll take at least 6 months. Once the advisor actually says, oh yeah, we'll do this, there can be a very long courtship period long before that. That'll run its way through as well. And of course the licensing thing is an interesting thing because there's lots of focus on get your license by the 15th of March. One done, forgotten about, all done, yeah? Nope. So how are they treating that licensing process? Not just to get their full license in place, but the review of everything and working their way through. If the documents that they based their license process on are 2 years old, probably not much cop at this stage.
And I think leading on from that, it's you talk about, we've got that, now we can just move on. Well, the work's just beginning. It is around how you know from a governance perspective that all the things that you said you did, you are actually doing. And I think that's going to be, like we talk about, are you running a business or are you running a book of business? So this is where it's really important to think about how you're going to know and the processes you put around that, the controls there, the risks that exist, and the changing of the processes and procedures, because even for ourselves, looking at the processes is going to be a continual thing that we have to do and make sure that we're updating them. So it's a continuum of running a good business is what I would say this is.
So it's a good segue into governance, and just want to pick up Tony's comment there. 6 months for DD, like you've got to start now, like yesterday, because 15th of March is less than 6 months is the way I see it. Moving on to governance now. So people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. Can we get some comments on as an executive, as a board, what you do throughout the year to plan to succeed during all the headwinds that occur throughout business life?
Thank you. We have an advisory board. So for us, we're still a mum and dad business essentially, and we've grown a lot in a short space of time, and we've got a lot bigger. So we tend to use an advisory board, which we meet and we go through those high level things that impact on our business over the year, and they're wide ranging all the way from compliance and advice processes, and we can start at the top and end at the bottom. But for us, though, we tend to put a lot more governance on a day-to-day basis from an operational point of view in terms of an ongoing. One thing that we got out of the Financial Advice New Zealand conference last week was around power meetings. We're very good at having meetings. We have weekly meetings with our teams. We try and keep them really short, and we keep on then diverging back into what are our goals and what are our strategic views that we're taking, and how are we getting into that, having that vision and the mission statement on a monthly basis and continually working towards that. And so now we've tried to then shorten down our sort of half an hour meeting a week into 5 or 10 minute meetings a day in the office, as opposed to trying to do too much all the time and getting sucked into meetings everywhere. After a week of doing it, it seems to be working a lot already. Like we seem to be, there seems to be a lot more communication in the office, and people seem to know where everyone's sitting a lot more, and it really seems to have made a big difference. So thank you to Kamal from Australia, who told me that last week.
I guess in our business it's a different scale, and governance has got to match the scale of the business. So shares a cooperative. So we've got 50 majority shareholders. Each one of them thinks they own the business. So we've got 50 majority shareholders to start with. That's a full AGM once a year. All the corporate bells and whistles that go with a full set of annual audited accounts, and then board meetings every 6 weeks, and that's 4 board meetings for the 4 companies that sit within that. There's a risk committee that sits under that. All of that is staffed. All of that is non-customer facing time spent by the people in the business, and all of that is supported by a support office, so a head office as such, that supports all of the advisors that sit around that. So that kind of scale of business allows a governance structure that can do that and deliver the policies and procedures and everything on behalf of the advisors to allow them to get on with seeing the clients. But that doesn't mean that that's the only way to do that. So again, governance has to fit the scale of the business. That level of governance fits the scale of our business. Advisory board, or even just advisor to a single financial advisor in a business can work just as well.
So because we are a smaller team than Tim's and yours as well, we keep things pretty agile. We catch up every day. We sit right next to each other, so it's not too hard. But we just make sure that everything that we're doing in our business aligns with our key mission and our key strategies, even coming down to choosing clients. Like, do they fit with what we're actually trying to do and where we're trying to go? And we've also, because we have a company that we employ for our compliance side of things, they keep us on track all the time, checking in with us. Hey, have you done this? You've got your procedures review coming up next week. This is what you need to have prepped for us. So it really keeps us on track and makes sure that we're not taking on all the responsibility ourselves. We're actually getting professionals to help us as well, just to keep us in check.
I think that's about me.
Conscious of time, I'll move on to cybersecurity. It came up as a risk that we need to all think about, with the reputational risk that can occur with a breach, privacy issues as well, affecting us all, and also the cost associated with it. I was keen to hear some of the practical things that you've done to protect your businesses when it comes to cybersecurity.
Well, I think cybersecurity's got to kick off with 2-factor authentication. I think that's just table stakes for our world now. It just has to have 2-factor authentication. The little doodacky that we all use to be able to sign into our bank account on the internet, to make sure, that kind of is probably the most practical way of keeping the bad guys out. Cybersecurity is one of the 2 things that really keeps me awake at night. The other one's the economy, but cybersecurity worries me, because you can never know whether you've done enough, or whether you're lucky enough. And there's always a smart person out there, and they only have to get lucky once, and they find their way into your system, and all of a sudden you've got a ransom demand, or your denial of service, or whatever works. And that's a disaster, because as financial advisors, the advisors get probably more information than anybody else in their sphere of friends and relations would ever get. They get all the financials, they get all the medical, they get absolutely everything, and that all sits in the CRM system. Losing that is a pretty serious thing, or losing control of that information. So cybersecurity makes me nervous. We do the best we can. We have a CRM system that is as good as it can be. We have two-factor authentication in place that is as good as it can be. But ultimately, at the end of all of that, we get flesh and blood and human bodies. And sometimes they either make mistakes or they don't pay enough attention, and that can be the hole that somebody comes through. So it's the thing that worries me, because I can never be sure that there's enough done.
We are managing a huge amount of money across KiwiSaver and DIMS and all the rest of it, and so for us, most of those clients, we know them personally, so we try to, if someone sends in an email to request withdrawals, we tend to ring them on the back of that, just to make sure, and ask them a couple of questions as well, just to make sure that it is who they say it is. In the last 5 years, we had two people. One was actually on holiday in the UK who emailed us, asked for some money out, and so we called them, and they hadn't sent the email, and they were in the UK. And we had another one who said to us that they were on holiday in Hong Kong and they were going to buy an apartment, and so we rang them, and they were still in the Wairarapa. They actually weren't overseas at all. But in both times, someone had just hacked into their email accounts and had sent us a written instruction to withdraw money, and so if we just acted on that, then obviously that would have been bad. They were changing bank accounts and stuff too, so we obviously have we only pay out to bank accounts we have registered on file and all that sort of thing. I was at a general insurance conference in May, and what the cybersecurity expert said that it won't be too far away where most businesses won't be able to afford cybersecurity any longer because it's going to be too expensive for them to offer it. Which was a pretty humbling thought to the crowd, particularly to the advisors that were sitting there. And I imagine that, so that wasn't just for financial advice, that was for businesses in general across the world, is that the risk is going to get too great and it's going to be too large that insurance is not going to be there anymore. I suppose a little bit like, wasn't it when we had COVID and everyone went, oh my God, insurance is going to cover COVID, and all the insurers ran for the hills because they knew that they weren't going to be able to pay for what was going to happen down the track, and essentially governments ended up paying for it instead of the insurers. And so perhaps that's where cybersecurity is going to go in the future, is that it's going to land on governments as opposed to insurance. Yeah, they've already indicated they're not paying for it down the track probably.
I'd probably just add, don't try and DIY it. This is definitely something you want to outsource. And just simple things like making sure your work devices are only for work, so they're managed by a cybersecurity expert, so your IT team, and also just don't do a little bit of due diligence on your IT provider as well. Don't just accept that what they say they're doing, they're actually doing, because we've noticed that they don't always say what they're doing. So you need to really understand what they're doing and make sure that they're keeping on track as well. Yeah, we've invested a lot into our cybersecurity because that is our whole business, and it definitely keeps me up at night as well. So it's a huge concern. Our cyber team actually said that basically everyone's going to get touched by some sort of cybersecurity incident, if you haven't been already. And 9 times out of 10, you don't even know what's happening. They've already infiltrated your system, and they're sitting there, well, bots are sitting there behind the scenes for months, reading all your data before something actually happens, and then you're stuffed. So, yeah, definitely something to invest in.
We've all been affected by it. I can tell you now that you've all been hacked in some way. Like I did some research with a cybersecurity firm, and they showed me my passwords from many years ago that were just freely available on the dark web, whatever. Previous usernames, passwords of many organisations that I've worked with. Just absolutely incredible, just the hacking that's going out there. So it is just a matter of time. So some things that we actually do is we yearly train our staff, just make them aware, constantly remind them, because nearly every month phishing is just so huge. My name gets masked over so many emails requesting information from my employees to pass on to others. And we train them enough, we haven't any breaches, but they forward it on to myself and the IT team. So I think a lot of it's just awareness across your staff. Don't let any one of your staff members not be trained, I suppose, in these things.
I was getting money. I was getting emails from myself asking for myself for money.
I know.
And so
Something happens.
I had to ring the IT guy and say, what's happening here? And he's tried to explain it, and I just didn't understand it. And I went back to him like 3 times. Like, how is this possible?
Yeah. What was it you told me that you signed off with this? uniquely. Is that right? So you know it's from you?
No, not quite that, but some people might like receiving this and many others might not. But putting a photograph of you in your email address is actually quite a neat way, because whenever someone does what Dan's just described, of course the photograph doesn't come with it. So I say to the crew in my business, if it doesn't come with my photograph, it's not me, it's someone pretending to be me. Of course that means they got to look at my photograph every time they get an email from me, and they're not desperately surprised about that.
Well, good. I've just got a few more questions before we finish off. So we've got one from the audience. Thank you, Katrina. So to increase the pipeline for careers in financial planning, do you think there needs to be a change in the model to salary plus commission as opposed to commission only? How can this change happen on scale? Is the question.
I'll talk from an insurance perspective, and that is that there will be businesses that want advisors that are employed and prepared to pay a salary. There will be other businesses that want to pay a base and commission, and then there'll be another bucket that are commission only. So my view on this in terms of who we get coming through our Career Connect program is that they will go into the specific buckets and be aligned with businesses that are in that space. So it'll be interesting to see, because we've seen, I suppose, in the last, as long as I've been in financial services, that those leaving really well-paid jobs to go straight to commission without all the support services around them, we are setting them up to fail in some aspects of that, and I think the stats show that. So we have to do things a little bit differently going forward, and remember that it's not golfing on Friday and a lifestyle that you can earn $200,000 in the first year. And I think that's kind of been some of the messaging that we've given to the marketplace around what it's like to be a financial advisor in the first few years, and we know that's not the case.
Well, can I just leave with one more question before we sort of hand over? So what's the key behaviour or characteristic of an advisor that you're looking for someone that's coming in new to the industry?
Yep, someone that's new. I have to write all this down just so when I get up here and I get nervous. So I suppose about relationship building and being really good with the connection with people, that they've got the drive to actually make a difference. And when we've been doing the videos with a selection of advisors, one of the things that really came through was, how involved and how they want to make a difference in this world, and they see that this is a way of actually doing that. Always good if you have your glasses on. Self-motivated, financially stable. It's surprising at times, doing credit checks of people that want to come into the industry. You need to be financially stable to actually provide financial advice to other people. Good communication skills and resilience, because we know that it's not easy sometimes in this industry, and so we'll get all sorts, and we'll filter through those and choose the best for the program, and then work through a plan for the others. So
I think to Katrina's point, so in our business we have salaried advisors, we have commission-only advisors, and we have hybrid in between, and people move backwards and forwards between those models. And I think it's really important, because what it does is it encourages diversity, and it encourages diversity because of the points that Tricia has just made. Some people just aren't able to step out of a position where they're maybe supporting a family to come into a commission-only and hey, I hope this works type scenario. So I think those different types of REM structures really crucial in encouraging diversity and changing the face of the advisor market that we have right now.
I've been told to call it time now. That brings us into the session. Look, I hope we've given you some practical advice, tips to navigate those headwinds out there and prepare your business and ensure that your business is set up for growth. So I just want to thank our panel and for you all to attending this session here, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you all. Cheers.